Welcome in Ole Miss 33, Vanderbilt 7, the NPW Digital Postgame show presented by Dead Soxy. I'm Chase Parham. Jeffrey Wright already in the screen there with you, but you can see him now, I'm assuming. There as we're getting going, we're going to talk to him. We're going to talk to Neil. We're going to talk to Brian coming up. This will also be in podcast form as quickly as possible. You know by now that all NPW Digital podcasts presented by Twisted Tea. More on them in a little bit, but Ole Miss takes care of it. They cover the spread. We're going to dive into it, but we're here because Dead Soxy takes care of us. So real quick, tell you a little bit about them. We know it's time to elevate your game day look, but Soxy financially support the Rebels. Every step you take shapes the future of Ole Miss athletics. Sign up for a sock subscription and get the exclusive Juice Kiffin sock free. It's on your screen right now. If you are in the stream, if you're in podcast, you can check out the stream to see the Juice socks. Visit deadsoxy.com. Choose a subscription to receive the latest in Ole Miss styles every month or at an interval that best suits you. Take the next step, upgrade your socks, and elevate Ole Miss. As always, stay Soxy. You know to use Rebel Grove as a code, and you always get 20% off there with Dead Soxy. So anyway, Ole Miss 33, Vanderbilt 7 as we jump back into it again. Jeffrey Wright here with me now. Jeffrey, they cover the spread. They're up 26-0 at halftime. Probably should have been up a little more, if anything, there at that point. Just general impressions of what tonight looked. Look, maybe you had Ole Miss covering, maybe you didn't, but for the most part, I thought this game looked exactly like we sort of thought.
Yeah, I actually took him to cover. Those out there, Josie's now 7-1 against the spread. She is indeed a wagon for the Rebels. It was clearly there was an emphasis on starting fast, coming out with energy. Lane mentioned that's why they put the basketball goal up, was to avoid the obvious hangover spot or letdown spot that would be. And they come out and they score in their first fives. Red zone still wasn't super crisp. And I know Vanderbilt's like horrible. I mean, there's a reason why I bet against them every week. They still didn't move the ball really at all. And it's kind of funny how this team is kind of becoming a team that feels like they are winning more with their defense than they are with their offense. Their offense does more than just enough. Like, I don't feel like they're like a Big Ten team where, like, they're not like SEC Iowa, but their offense just isn't quite there 100. But they have been good enough with the exception of one game, and that's the only game they lost.
Yeah, what I thought tonight, what I wrote about Rapid Reaction already up at rebelgrove.com. You can check that out. Neil's column either is up or will be up in a few minutes. He was already writing ahead, getting out of there as fast as possible tonight after the press conferences. So we'll probably get him from the Clarkport studio whenever he does jump on with us. But, look, as you mentioned, we'll get in plenty with the offense, plenty with Dart, plenty with what was going on with them. But I thought defensively, there was a stat earlier in the week. I think we talked about it on Hand Raise Guys that Ole Miss led the SEC in fewest yards allowed rushing before contact. Now, they were
Yeah.
not first in the SEC in rushing yards allowed because
Yeah.
people run through them, things, all that stuff. But from a straight being in the right spot, they've done such a good job this year. And this was a maturity game because Vanderbilt, as you said, is far from explosive. But you can make mistakes and blow coverages and do things to make that thing a little complicated there in the first half. Frankly, Georgia did that against Vanderbilt when they played them. Vanderbilt moved the ball a little bit, hit some big plays, ran the ball a little bit. It was a little bit of whatever. Ole Miss defensively completely suffocated them from the outset and took away any thought that it was going to be a competitive game. I mean, that's what I was writing about. I've got it here. In the first half, Ole Miss allowed 82 total yards, 11 passing yards, only 1 third down conversion. They were 1 for 8. One play inside Ole Miss territory, no plays inside the red zone, only 4 first downs, and fewer than 4 yards per rush. It was a dominant defensive effort in the first half that took away everything. Vanderbilt already changed quarterbacks before the first half was over. Pete Golding's defense has shown a lot of maturity, has shown a lot of ability to be in the right place at the right time. We talk about jokes with eyes and fits and all those things. And look, they need more talent. They've got to get better overall. But in general, I thought that, as you were kind of alluding to there, the defense is the story because they continue to get better as the year is going on.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it. Vanderbilt had 12 drives and scored on one. I mean, I think they averaged 20 yards each drive. So, I mean, basically, it feels like this team, like, yeah, they may give up a first down or two, but like you're not really scoring a lot on them. And I've kind of struggled with it internally, not from a perspective of I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's more of I don't see a team that's particularly fast on defense,
Hmm.
and I'm just not used to seeing defenses, at least in this league. Like Iowa doesn't have amazing team speed on defense, but they're a very good defense. But in this league, you don't typically see really good defenses, the defenses that have the metrics that Ole Miss does without elite speed. I feel like they have that, but it is a testament to what Pete has done with this unit where very rarely do you see coverage busts. Very rarely do you see, as you mentioned, guys completely out of position. And I think where they make up for maybe the lack of team speed, I do think the interior of their defensive line is really good.
It's really good, and they've got enough guys where everybody's fresh. They substitute better than Ole Miss
Yeah.
teams have substituted in the past. I mean, it just sort of gets done. And we talk a lot about how Cedric's not having the year that people necessarily thought he was going to have, and he's not. He hasn't turned into Sam Williams, but they get so much good stuff out of Jared Ivey and out of Wynn and out of Harris. Like they found sort of the right combination there to make a lot of plays, and it's taken some of the pressure off the linebackers who we knew were going to be a weakness going into the year to some extent. It just hasn't shown the way that we thought that might be. It's a LeBonner shirt from Monsters Ball last week. It's genteel. It's got like a bunch of Memphis stuff on it, but then it's got the LeBonner heart on it. Is what it is. People asking in the stream.
Uh, yeah, nothing wrong with LeBonner. Kind of gets overshadowed because of what a ridiculously amazing operation St. Jude is, but
Yeah, it's like you're
LeBonner,
not being negative in any way. It's
yeah,
just like yeah,
yeah, it's like it just gets overshadowed by St. Jude. But I mean, they do. If anyone's giving their money to LeBonner, it's not like I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Like, I support their mission too.
yeah. One rain around like 2 o'clock. Siski told me yesterday, do not do that thing very late at night because I'll be up. And to be honest, I'm a little sick. I'm a little under the weather, so I was being a little careful with caffeine intake late in the evening a little bit there. I've had to
Oh,
monitor
so
that a little bit.
you sound like Ole Miss's offense.
There you
Like
go.
they took a little early. They came out ready to go. They were on fire, but this game kind of.
It was. I don't know what to make of it because again, it's funny, and we talk about it all the time. Message board was a little pissed off, a little frustrated, and Ole Miss is up 4 touchdowns on a team that was leading them at halftime last year and has given them fits historically in so many different ways. I mean, the expectations have just changed to such an extent, overall team wise and position wise. Because look, this was probably Dart's worst game of the season overall. I thought
Yeah,
that he missed throws. I thought that he had read issues. I thought he was late several times that would have led to big games had he just thrown the ball on time. He was not his normal
he had
self. They didn't really,
he
yeah,
had
they
some
didn't really
short
get
hops.
into, yeah, they did. They didn't really get into a rhythm with him running the ball. I'm just having a hard time making it be something macro instead of just Vanderbilt for one night and is what it is. I'm having a really hard time when they cover the spread, they win 33-7, they get over 30 points, and his eventual stats were fine to the point of really getting on him too much. But it definitely was not an effort that's going to win one of the next 2 weeks. He's got to be better than that, and he probably will be. It was Vanderbilt.
It felt like the pitcher that came out, he just didn't have command. Like, are you going to give up on him because he came out one day and didn't have command? Because I thought for the most part, yeah, there was some late reads, but I think a decent amount of that was he. It did feel like I want to give the offensive line credit. I felt like he had more protection tonight than he has. Like he had time and whatnot. I do think he was kind of holding on, thinking maybe some stuff would come open late. Um, but he was just not accurate tonight. Even on the interception, like that was a touchdown. If he just underthrew it, like the whoever was the receiver had gotten completely behind the DBs If he just puts air under it and throws it over, it's a touchdown. A lot of the throws to the outside felt like they were either one hopped or wide, but I just felt like it was a night where he just didn't have command of the zone, and I'm not gonna. I've seen him. He doesn't normally stack back to back bad performances together, and so I'm with you. Now,
Yeah,
if someone were to present to me, hey, maybe he wasn't accurate tonight because of some type of injury or whatnot, okay, it's like, okay, well then that's new information that I need. But I didn't think he looked. I thought he looked fine, please. So I just think he had an off night throwing.
Yeah, I didn't see anything with the knee that looked like from a fundamental standpoint that was giving him a ton of trouble. I mean, he throws off his back foot a lot. He sort of rushes and forces stuff off his back foot when he's getting pressured, but it didn't look like mechanically when he had time and he had the ability to step into throws that he was causing a problem there. And like I said, statistically, and I know Dayton Wade bailed him out at least once here on these stats, but if his
Was that catch of the year? Is
yeah,
that better than his
there's no
Tulane
doubt.
catch?
Oh, um, I think so
I
because
I
of
think
continuing it all the way to the ground and
yeah
holding on.
yeah I'm with you. I mean both were outstanding catches, but like I felt like I was more like holy shit on that catch than I was the Tulane catch.
Yeah, Jackson Dart, 19 of 28, 240 yards, a touchdown, a pick, completes 68% of his passes. That's a 144.5 rating, although I really don't know what the hell in college a rating is good or not for. It's not like the
It's
158.3 in the NFL.
an efficiency rating. I
But,
mean
like,
like
what's good?
uh 200.
Okay. So he is below average.
Yes, tonight
Okay.
was even below his. I think he's been around like 175, 176, something like that.
Okay. Dayton Wade, 8 catches out of 9 targets, 120 yards, touchdown, including that 48-yarder for his long. Trey Harris, 6 catches out of 8 targets, 67 yards. Watkins, 3 catches, 44 yards. And then Aiden Williams catches one late. Judkins one. Bentley one as well. Quinshawn goes 17 of 124, 2 touchdowns. He averaged 7.3 per carry, had a long of 40. Bentley 7 for 42. He averaged 6, had a long of 16. Judkins kind of ran his ass off tonight. I thought he kept balance as well as he has maybe anytime all season. He was really really good, and they did the whole kind of back to they split up possessions evenly as the game went on.
Yeah, I think they might be from him banged up early, whereas it feels like as the season goes on, he's getting stronger, and it feels like he's looking better. Um, but on the targets and whatnot, like the only time I've ever actually gotten pissed at Jackson Dart because I typically don't really care one way or the other unless I bet on him. When he missed Hudson Wolf after knowing everything that kid's gone through, I was so pissed. I was like, you got to put that on. That was his chance to like have a moment. Put that on him.
Yeah, both tight ends. Like every time they get out in a route, I'm like, hey, let Prescorn score. Let Hudson Wolf score. Come on, get there.
Did you see the play where Priestcorn today blocked a guy 3 rows deep into the bench?
I missed this. No, I didn't see it.
It was like a swing pass, and whoever he was blocking, like he completely took him like 3 rows deep into the Ole Miss bench. And at first, I thought they were going to throw like an unnecessary roughness thing, but like it was first off, it helped. It was into the Ole Miss bench, but it was one of those blocks where it's like, man, you better throw him the ball after that. Like that was that was a hell of a block.
Stanton, thanks for super chat. He says the announcers kept referencing that Ole Miss is playing for an SEC championship. It feels good to hear. Realistic. I mean, you need a ton of help. It's just hard to. You got to go 11-1, and as they were talking about there at the end of the game, that tiebreaker just does not suit Ole Miss at all because you end up in a tiebreaker where it matters what your East opponent's record is, and you played Vanderbilt, and their record is there. I mean, I know you played Georgia too, but still.
So
You
who
need
did
Vanderbilt to win. Vanderbilt has to
Bama
win a
got
game or two
Tennessee,
to give them a chance.
Tennessee, and who?
I'm trying to think. I don't even know off the top of my head.
Because the other problem Ole Miss has is like the advantage would be you play Georgia, but for this to matter in that scenario, you beat Georgia, and so it's like so Bama. I'm trying to think who Bama's played this year. Tennessee.
Yeah, I
I
know
think
going into the
they get.
weekend, Ole Miss would not get it based off the numbers we know today. Like they were kind of out of it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is I don't think they've won next week, and I know everyone's like cashing in Texas A&M as a win. I think Texas A&M is going to present some problems for them. Now, I think Ole Miss presents problems for Texas
Hmm.
A&M too, but like Texas A&M, other than LSU, is probably going to have the best receivers that they've seen. Texas A&M will have the best defensive front they've seen, other than Alabama. And we've seen when this team goes up against a really nasty front, the offense kind of gets stale and
Hmm.
stalls out. So I guess if I'm an Ole Miss fan, like I'm looking at this next week is huge because if you take care of business, you set up a game at Georgia, but like I feel like everyone's kind of doing the whole. I think everyone's really looking past Texas A&M, and I think Texas A&M is physically going to present challenges for them that I don't think the fan base is ready for. At
Yeah,
least in
well,
terms of, I think they just see that. I think they see Texas A&M scores and they see who they've lost to, and they kind of just you know dismiss them. Texas A&M's gonna be a tough matchup for them.
yeah, look, here's the deal: is A&M finds ways to blow games. They kind of crumple over themselves. They're not sound, which is
Yeah.
why Ole Miss is in shape. Obviously, they can win the game next week. They're going to be a favorite on the line. But yes, though A&M is very good up front defensively. We'll talk about this all week. With they do from a matchup standpoint in college football is all about week to week matchups. That's literally what the
Yes.
sport is in 2023. It's fascinating because it's who can minimize and mitigate their matchup issue, A&M or Ole Miss, in different ways. Because A&M can't stop anybody at times. I mean, you can throw on them, you can run on them, even with that defensive front. If you can block a little bit, it's a mess. And it dovetails into this. Jay Young, thanks for super chat. He says anything less than 10-2 is a disappointment, right? Yeah, I mean, because that means you lost the two games that are dictating things right now. The rest of the way, so you lost LSU. I mean, to A&M, you didn't pull an upset over Georgia, unless you think you're going to like get upset by State or something. Because I mean, your goal right now, I think the goals are on multiple levels. Is your initial goal is to beat A&M, let Georgia be a free shot, beat State, beat ULM. You're 10-2, and you go to an Access Bowl. You're going to go to the Cotton Bowl. You're going to go to the Orange Bowl, and you're going to have a hell of a season. Congratulations. And then if anything happens past that, and you are the one that pulls it off in Athens, and somehow you get to 11-1, it's why the SEC championship thing to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Ole Miss has a better chance of making the playoff than going to Atlanta.
Yeah. Although
Shit going sideways all over the country is more likely than the exact situations that have to play out with Vanderbilt winning a football game in the SEC. It just doesn't make sense. Unless you think Bama's losing twice, and I'd love to know where you're coming up with that one.
so, I think Bama. I think LSU is going to get them. Um.
Somebody else
So
getting
if
them though?
LSU, but if LSU, won't they all be 7-1?
Yeah.
And so then everyone's doing the whole scheduling. I thought the first tiebreaker though was
Jeffrey's internet is worse than it usually is. We'll see. Let him come back to that in a second. Hopefully he's not freezing up. May have to reconnect. If so, that's okay. We'll get there when it does. Yeah, like I said, it does not look like from everything I've heard that they have a huge chance of winning the tiebreaker. It's just not the way this thing is set up right now. And I mean, I just think national chaos is more likely if you're going to do that. Big Ben saying that LSU goes in a three-way situation. Sure, I'll buy that. I have not looked at it to that extent to know the answer to that at this point, but I think that's perfectly something that I'll buy at that point. Let's see. Let's see. Robert, thanks for the super chat. He says, if Ole Miss loses to A&M, it would be a disappointment. Yeah, sure, because it's a winnable game. It would absolutely be a disappointment at that point. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Um, Jeffrey, go ahead. Start over whatever you were saying there. You kind of froze up.
Sorry, I don't know if it's my. I think it's probably my internet. So I guess the fact that everyone they were talking about on the broadcast, but like I thought if everyone is tied at if you have a three-way tie at 7-1, just went to who's ranked higher in the college football playoff rankings.
No, that went out with whatever at this point. If it's a three-way thing, like I was seeing the thing, it looks like barring Vanderbilt just going on some run, LSU would have the ultimate win there. And Bama actually would lose out too. LSU would have the victory.
Yeah, I guess the biggest problem that I struggle with is, I understand it's how a season plays out, but if they wind up going 9-3 and we act like that's a failure, like I kind of struggle with that. Like
It's kind of the
how
ultimate
many
thing is do you move the bar as a season plays out?
like I do understand in the end like expectations do change week to week, but at the same time, how many teams don't how many teams don't lose at least one game a year that they think they're winning? Georgia, Bama even last year. You know what I mean? Like they lost at least one game that they didn't think they're going to lose. Like I just really struggle with saying 9-3 would not be a success just because, and it does feel like part of the people feeling like 9-3 wouldn't be a success. It feels like part of that is the A&M factor.
Uh, Man32.com. Yeah, the Florida State game just doesn't matter at all. I mean, again, the way the tiebreakers would work, it would get down to East opponents. It just is what it is. Like I have not looked at it, but everybody's saying that, so they're not all wrong at this point. So what happened against Florida State is not deal.
Yeah,
Um,
in the end, I do trust the broadcast crew that literally works for the SEC
yeah, yeah,
network.
yeah.
I personally, it's like I said, like it was the thing where I was like, I always thought it was the playoff rankings, but then when they were, it's like, oh well, clearly I was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss, barring a loss to Mississippi State, their floor right now is the Citrus Bowl. I mean,
Yeah, I think
nine
that's
and
probably
three.
fair.
I mean, whatever, with the Citrus Bowl or whatever that is. But I mean, they are a
Every other nine and
more
three year, that was their access bowls.
right, exactly. That's something. Yeah, yeah, sure. They they are a more mature team than Texas A&M. They know how to win more than Texas
I
A&M.
agree. No, I actually like I like how you laid it out. A&M beats itself much more than Ole Miss does. Like Ole Miss's one loss this year, I do not feel like they beat themselves, unless you want to make the argument having a poor game plan was beating itself. But I I physically got beat that night. I don't feel like they made the mistakes. Texas A&M, but this is kind of the point that I'm making. I understand it's not the same. Texas A&M was at home. Alabama for Ole Miss was on the road. But Texas A&M, I felt like beat itself against Alabama. I don't feel like Ole Miss did, and that's kind of my point. It's like I just hope everybody is aware. I think next week's going to be a dogfight.
Oh, I do too. I think it's a four-quarter game, all that stuff, all that blah 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 blah. I would rather have Jackson Dart than Johnson.
I
Frankly,
agree.
I'd rather have Lane than Jimbo. And
I agree.
Ole Miss is at home. And frankly, A&M has not played very well in Oxford over the years. If you want to make that into
Well, no,
something or not.
the other thing is, Lane's kind of had Jimbo's number.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, he hasn't lost, right?
Because
Because
look,
the first year,
if it's anybody better than South Carolina as a team, I know Rattler's pretty good. They're in for a freaking war today. I mean, they ended up winning by 13. It was sleepy early on. They got off to a bad start. Carolina goes up 7-0. Had chances to kind of extend it out. I guess I'm just having a hard time looking at A&M as a team and going, when this season have they put it together that makes any sense? And they really haven't. I mean, they've sort of found ways to lose every single time.
no, honestly, probably their best game was Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
and even in that game, like they threw a pick six on a swing route. Like, how the hell do you do that? Like, um, I I agree. I guess what I'm preparing people. I think I think people are thinking the A&M game is going to be a lot like the Auburn game was. Where like maybe it's close, but like you're never really going to doubt that Ole Miss is going to win. A&M is better by a lot physically than A&M will be the best team that they've played since LSU by a mile.
A&M is actually, that's kind of what they remind me of. They're almost kind of a better Auburn.
Yes, they're
I mean,
Auburn. They're
that's that.
Auburn. Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Jay Young again thanks. Says Kiffin has raised the bar to playoff or bust moving forward. Are you wrong? I mean, look, it's seasonal because of portal and things, but in general, no. I mean, Ole Miss is going to go into next season 100% being a team that has top 12 aspirations if they had an unsuccessful season. You get Dart back, you've got Judkins in a year three. You obviously would believe that Golding would be making the defense competitive to whatever degree next year. I mean, I I would be a little surprised if unless Ole Miss just completely takes the pipe the rest of the way or something. As long as they sort of just tread water and get home, they're going to be a top 15 team in the preseason next year, and maybe a good bit higher than that. I mean, I know. So yeah, you're right. Now that it's going to 12 teams, and plus Ole Miss's schedule is pretty good next year. I mean, not to look too far ahead, but you don't play Alabama. I mean, like that schedule's not bad inside the SEC next year at all.
So I looked at it earlier. So you got Furman, MTSU at Wake. Are we doing that again? Really? Um, I will never forget staying up in freaking Lausanne, Switzerland, and watching that '08 Wake game where remember they had the pass interference. It was nut going to Wake and they lost. That was a
Sam
fun one. Glad to see
Swank and
that.
Riley Skinner.
Yeah, baby. Riley Skinner. Shout out Bowl School.
Hmm.
Georgia Southern, and then the conference schedule is Arkansas, Florida, LSU, South Carolina on the road, Georgia, Kentucky State, Oklahoma, and Oxford.
It could be worse. That's not terrible.
No, basically you drop Alabama and Auburn for
Florida and South Carolina.
Oklahoma, Florida. Yeah. Yeah, the problem is though, someone out there who has more time on their hands than I do, someone needs to make a Sarah McLaughlin I will remember you video to the Vanderbilt series. Like there's just so many great moments when they were talking about uh Ole Miss is 18-2 against Vanderbilt on homecoming. I was like, I'm pretty sure the Greg Zolman overtime was homecoming, and then I guess was the only other times I could think of was it the Jordan Rogers game? Was that homecoming, or was it the game where Dexter fumbled like 7 times?
I think it was Dex.
That felt about right.
Yeah, I don't remember what homecoming was in 12 when Jordan Rogers when he pulled it off and he won that one. Couple things here. I, First, how did we feel about all the Pegues quarterback plays?
You know how I feel about that. Like that. I'm not. I can't be a hypocrite. I can't mock Hugh for it and act like Lane's a genius. I think
I
it's all
will
stupid.
say though, it was going to be a blowout, so let the kids have some fun. Okay, whatever. He wasn't doing
I
it
agree.
against Alabama in the fourth quarter.
I agree. Well, or
Whatever.
like that wasn't part of his offense. Like I do agree with you on that. Like it was clearly trying to get a kid a moment. Like I understand that, but I mean, good God, like put him do. Haven't they been using him as an up back in some short yardage
Yeah,
stuff?
good. Yeah, good bit.
So have him release in the flat, throw him the ball, give him a
He play,
touchdown that way.
he played tight end. He'll catch it.
Yeah, like he's a great athlete, but like I will say, Hart had an unbelievable line when it was like third, whatever. He ran the ball on third down. Dart came in. What call him like a little more agility this time, but there's not a big bear running it. I think he called him a big bear, and I was like, okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he was feeling himself a little bit tonight. You got that. You had the Michigan scouting joke. He left a few out there.
Yeah, I'm a Tom Hart guy. Obviously, this household has to be staunchly anti Jordan Rogers. Uh, I will admit, like I think my wife I disagree with her on how annoying he is. The Taylor Swift shit tonight was so annoying. Like I do not care that you literally went to a Taylor Swift concert in 2006. Like I don't care.
It it's the one thing that broadcasting crew has not figured out is how to kill dead air. None of them are very good at it, and they end up talking too
Well,
much.
the problem though is I will give them I'll be fair to them on this. Everyone else that has blowout material, when you are the SEC network blowout material, you can't talk like they can't talk about hey, Ole Miss can, embarrass Vanderbilt because then there'll be people like, well, you can't say anything bad about Vanderbilt. Like you can't like they are more limited in their material for blowouts than everyone else is. So like I don't envy them in that perspective, but can we at least do something other than what was Jordan social media? Like I don't care. Like do honestly, read next year's schedule. I'll find that much more and like I don't need to see another rendition of Jordan trying to do an Ice Ice Baby parody. Like I'm good. I don't need that.
We got plenty of Ole Miss talk coming. Still got Neil, still got Brian, we got stuff. But Jeffrey's my pop culture guy. Just for 2 minutes, you let us do this here. This Matthew Perry thing that happens during the game. I mean, it sort of really affected me for a few minutes. I mean, this is kind of unbelievable.
How?
Well, no, not unbelievable that it
No, no,
ends
but like
exactly
how?
like that.
Okay, but here would be my point. Like I can understand. Like when Robin Williams died, like a part of my childhood died, and that affected me. But like Matthew giving you a couple of heads up, like we'd been seeing him publicly, and every time you saw him publicly, you're like, oh my god, like he looks horrible. Like this one can't take like the ones that take you by surprise, I understand. But like Matthew Perry had basically been saying like he'd been like putting his hands up for like the last 10 years. Like, I mean, what was this? Aaliyah was reading me some note. He claims he spent $9 million for rehab or sober homes
I didn't know that. I didn't
and
know that.
half of his life. Yeah, like no, like Aaliyah was and also our buddy Marshall pointed out like you can't really claim that it's that devastating. As soon as he dies, everyone's got about 2,000 words ready to go, which
Hmm.
means like everyone like in the pop culture scene was like, well, this was probably this was probably happening sooner rather than later. I mean, I'm not like making light of saying like it's not sad. It's just the ones that always affect me the most are the ones that kind of come out of nowhere. Like at least Matthew Perry gave us a heads up.
Yeah, I mean, as Daniel says in the stream, season three was the one where he essentially did the entire season completely out of his mind. Um, I mean, you'll notice weight gain, loss, all that stuff. Just, I mean, yeah, it just, it's a show that, I mean, my generation for sure, and into yours a little bit, even though you're a little younger than me. I mean, everybody's trying to rewatch it and stuff. But I guess that's the thing. Like, no more reunions, no more whatever. It's just over and gone right there at that
Yeah,
point for
but
something
like
that
I
was
mean,
around for so long.
remember him at that last reunion that HBO like he
Yeah.
couldn't put sentences together.
Hmm.
And what did he try to blame it on? Like did he say like he had plastic surgery or something? But it's like, but I mean, how many people drown in their 50s? Like,
Yeah. And I mean, he was in a jacuzzi.
I mean,
Yeah. Signs were there. Um, around
you
the league a little bit.
it looks by the way, it looks like North Carolina might do it again.
Yeah, I'm staring watching that right now. Georgia Tech just picks up a fumble. That's what I've kind of got on the TV in front of me.
So it's gonna be
Um,
a matter of do they call it complete or incomplete? No, it's a catch and fumble.
oh, for sure. Yeah, he's got a couple steps on a football move there. That's fine. Tulane did pull it out today over Rice. They tried to lose, but they still won. I think Air Force still won as well.
They
So
did. Uh, the second half because I took the points with Colorado State. Colorado State's second half I think was fumble, punt, 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 downs, downs, and they were tied at 13 at the half.
so
I'm trying to think what else happened today. All right, so because I kind of agree with your assessment on South Carolina. Although I will say, I think that was a touchdown for the tight end. I think he drug his foot. Like, I get it, like why they didn't call it. I actually thought it was a touchdown. If Texas A&M, like, it is weird how like so much of what we think about a team right now is whether or not they cover. Like,
Oh, that's true.
did you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
did you ever really think Texas A&M wasn't going to win that game?
No, they were going to win it the entire time, even when they were down 7-0, even during all the stuff. I mean, there is a certain thing where we are. I think it's the one thing we're doing as a college football collective, and I mean fans, I mean media, I mean
Yeah,
everybody involved is that we, depending on the team. Well, okay, when you win, we go, yeah, but you didn't cover, and you're vulnerable, and you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do all these different things. And then when you lose, we go, hey, see, it's just about surviving and advancing because that thing happens. But then we don't give the
yeah.
winners the same leeway in the same way at the same time. And yeah, by the way, Joseph, that's why I was mentioning the Tulane Air Force thing, because if Ole Miss is in an Access Bowl, I doubt they would rematch with Tulane, so it would put them somewhere else, because Tulane and Air Force are by far the two teams that would be most likely to get that Group of Five spot for an Access Bowl. So whoever's ahead
Uh,
can end up
don't
affecting
don't
Ole Miss
don't
there.
count out don't count out SMU.
Oh,
I think SMU is actually the best team in the league in the AAC. Now, I've been saying this on the radio show. The AAC has gotten too much CUSA in it. Like the CUSA's like that. I think Tulane's a good team. I think SMU's a good team, and I think Memphis is like somewhere between them and the rest of the league. And then I don't really know what to do with UTSA, but I wouldn't count on SMU. But like, let's be real. Nobody wants to be the team that has to play the G5 champion in the Access Bowl.
no, it's a morale killer all the way around. It's not even about losing it or that mattering. It's just you're playing that team.
It just
It's a month of
it
not,
just
hey,
doesn't.
we get SC or we get whomever. It's, oh, I play SMU.
Right, and like I because you did point this a couple of years ago, and I hadn't really thought about it. But it's like, give me Oklahoma State again for the 58th time in another sport playing SMU or playing Tulane or playing like I'd still rather play someone like that, like someone that they consistently played a ton. But uh, getting back to the rest of the league, all right, then Auburn and State battle of who could be less impressive. Um, I was pretty disappointed in State's defense today. I thought they came out really flat, and I'm sure he could plan. It looked like he was certainly calling plays in the first quarter, but they just didn't have any energy. Like it was very odd to me that was flat. Um, the the score I felt like with Tennessee and Kentucky was closer than the game was. Like if you watched it, Tennessee kind of did. If Ole Miss would have played a more competent team today, the things that would have gotten Ole Miss got see from blowing them out. It's kind of like last week. They were really bad in the red zone. They kicked too many field goals. But like if Ole Miss would have gotten into a game against like a really good opponent today, like the things we would have been talking about were like, hey, those possessions where they got the ball. What was it? The 12 after the interception, they get the ball at the 12 and they only got a
Hmm.
field goal. And then honestly, they were lucky to get a field goal on the second one where that could have been a pick six or whatever, a scoop and score the other way. Those those things kind of happened to Tennessee where like they just weren't great in the red zone. Um, is that what else? I'm trying to think. There wasn't another league game, right? We only had four, right?
Yeah, we had
Oh, and then Florida.
Florida.
Oh,
Yeah, Florida, Georgia.
oh, and then I think the new rule is touch a Georgia game unless it's a big game, and then just take Georgia and don't care what the number is. Like
It's the
it feels
thing
like
about Georgia
the
is, and again, this is next week. This is after the A&M thing happens, and we can look ahead. We don't play. It's Georgia is still more gettable than previous years. That is 100% true. But when they actually put that damn thing in gear, they look really damn good still. Like it still looks like Georgia when they find that motivation and lock in and they kind of have those 3, 4 possessions where they've got some explosiveness and they are a freaking python. And they just sort of bury you right there and that's game over and they go back into their lackluster, lackadaisical ways. It just doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, because Florida had a really good script to start the game, and after that, did they do anything until garbage time?
No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, that first drive, and give them credit, like Georgia or Florida put together a great first drive. I mean, that was a good mix. And then it felt like the biggest play of the game to me in that one was Florida when Florida went for it on 4th and a foot or whatever in their own territory, and they clearly had that gimmick play where Mertz looked like he was going to sneak it, and then they snapped it to Etienne, and Etienne was going to throw it, and Georgia just blew the play up. I felt like that was the moment. The thing that would concern me if I'm an Ole Miss fan, trying to dream as big as possible, I think Georgia's going to present the same problems that Alabama did. Like, I don't think maybe Georgia's front's quite as talented as Alabama's, but I also think Georgia's back end's way better. I don't know, man. Like, I think Georgia, when they have to mush people, they can.
Well, I mean, oh, look, I mean, we have plenty of time to get into what that looks like, but what that thing is going to look like is Ole Miss is going to need a turnover or two. They're going to big plays. I mean, it's going to look like the normal upset crap we're going to talk about that we always talk about is, hey, you play sound, you do this, you do this, you do all these different things, and go from there. I mean, so no, that's look that beat A&M,
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you
beat
the
A&M.
other thing. I I uh I really think Carson Beck's pretty good. The more I watch him, the more I like him. He's really accurate. He's uh he's got great footwork. Like, I think the dude's pretty good. And like, I understand, hey, playing quarterback with all those weapons is probably a lot easier than it is to play pretty much anywhere else. I still think I think he might legitimately be an upgrade over the mailman. The one thing I'll give the mailman over him is the mailman the mailman presented a better red zone option because he could run.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
from cops. He
yeah,
couldn't
yeah,
run
I'm
away
thinking
from
about it.
cops, but he could run away from defenses.
Georgia Tech up 46-42 right now, 150 to go. It is 2nd and 6 here as they are trying to pull this
That
off.
kills. We cooked up a little 4-teamer parlay today. The group chat. This is going to be a killer.
Oh, you had North Carolina in that thing.
We've already got the other 3 legs. The other 3 legs are home.
Oh, last thing. What's the line next week? You think?
I'm gonna say Ole Miss 6.5.
6.5.
I don't think it'll get over a touchdown. And if you tell me it comes out, whatever, like who releases first, Circa?
Yeah, they come out at like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning.
If you told me Circa does miss 4.5, I'm not super shocked.
Yeah, I was gonna 4.5, 5 was the number in my head before you said 6.5. It's kind of what I was thinking.
You could tell me percent, like they are trying to get people to bet on A&M. And I feel like if you put it around 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, I think people are just going to take Ole Miss. I think when you start dangling like, oh, maybe you could buy it to 7, maybe you get some people to take A&M. But again, like I'm not saying Ole Miss is going to get upset, but like I would caution everyone out there, like if you should be prepared for 4 quarter week. Like I think it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, I think something. I think with 5 minutes to go, somebody's getting the ball to go take a lead, one way or the
Yeah,
other.
I can buy that.
I think that's probably what we got going. So, all right, enjoy the night. Maybe you'll get this one for your parlay. We'll talk Thursday.
All right.
Was Jeffrey Wright there on the show? Give me a second to get things situated. We'll get Brian to call in a second. Neil's still finishing up as well. Neil was waiting on Trey Washington, who had 2 interceptions tonight for the Rebels. He was in the post game, so they were getting him squared away, and then Neil was headed home, and he will join us here on the show. So let's see. Let me get Brian. Tell him he can hop on in. We'll start talking to him. Yeah, the juice socks are great. Reminder, they are on the screen now. Dead Soxy, the reason that we have this post game show, the second year in a row, to be our title sponsor. We appreciate them. Remember, you can elevate your game day look with socks and financially support the Rebels. Again, every step you take shapes the future of Ole Miss athletics. Sign up for the sock subscription, and you get the Juice Kiffin socks for free. They are free if you sign up for the sock subscription. They get the latest in Ole Miss styles every month or whatever interval it is that suits you. So that is that Dead Soxy Juice Socks there on your screen as we're talking. Yeah, 46-42 now, Georgia Tech, 41 seconds to go, and they are going to pull this bad boy off. I'm looking, North Carolina timeouts. Is that it? Yeah, ball game. Georgia Tech's going to give North Carolina a loss. Quite the quite the good day for Ole Miss from a non-conference opponent standpoint. This is a big game for Georgia Tech. They moved to 4-4 on the season after this. Now they also have Georgia left on the schedule, so they can all lose one more time after that. Can they get bowl eligible? What is the rest of their schedule? Let me look that up real quick. Um, Georgia Tech football schedule. Yeah, Georgia Tech, Tulane, and LSU, all really good wins in different ways. I mean, the way they dominated that second half against Georgia Tech was huge. That wasn't fluky. They've been such a good second half team. Now I know they weren't tonight, but they're up 26-0. I'm not going to hold that against Ole Miss at this point. I thought that first half was such a mature half. I know I said it at the beginning of the show, but really and truly, that was such a good first half for Ole Miss from a defensive standpoint that you just suffocate an opponent like that. You put it away. You don't let Vanderbilt get spunky. Vanderbilt as a program is always circling Ole Miss. They had the lead at halftime last year. All those different things that can go weird, go wrong in different ways, and it was just over right there and done. And I thought that was really really huge for Ole Miss today. Let's see. Yeah, the schedule's funky, but they can get there. Georgia Tech now 4-4. They have Virginia in Charlottesville, Clemson in Clemson, Syracuse, and Georgia. So to get to 6-6 and to get to a bowl for Brent Key, that is a win over Virginia and Charlottesville most likely, and a win against Syracuse, even if they lose to Clemson and Georgia. So that's what's left for Georgia Tech. Let's see. Yeah, I know the field rushing is up this year, but it just, I mean, I worry about safety concerns, obviously, but beyond that, it's cool. Let them cook. No issue with that. I don't care. Uh, Clemson, by the way, coming off that loss today, Jeffrey and I did not mention that Clemson 24-17 losing to North Carolina State. So the Wolfpack and Dave Doran getting one there. Clemson with kind of an interesting schedule left. Clemson still gets Notre Dame and UNC, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina on that schedule. They're not done with losses yet at all. Really nowhere close to losses yet for the Tigers. See, get back into the stats for a second while we're waiting on Brian. What are you guys saying on the stream? Yeah, no, Ole Miss has been really good defensive end. Sad's been better. Jared Ivey's been huge here in the past few weeks. Bad loss for Mac Brown tonight. Coming off the other game, just yeah, not good. Yeah, Siski did call it. He's had a couple good ones here. Let's see. game comparison again. Ole Miss 431 total yards, Vanderbilt 229. Ole Miss ran for 177, Vanderbilt for 166. Ole Miss threw for 254. Vanderbilt only threw for 60 yards there. They played a couple different quarterbacks. They started Ken Seals. They played him, and then they moved to Wade Taylor. Taylor goes 4 for 12, 38 yards and a pick. Seals 4 for 8, 22 yards and a pick. Their leading receiver was Shepard, 4 catches, but only 17 yards. Sherrill, 2 catches, 28 yards. Only 4 receivers caught a ball. And then Taylor was also Vanderbilt's leading rusher. He goes 20 carries for 59 yards, long of 18. He averaged 3 carries, scored a touchdown there. Newberry, 3 carries, 30 yards. I mean, just defensively, Ole Miss was so good tonight. They did a great job. Vanderbilt only got in the red zone 1 time. They were 3 for 15 on 3rd down and 1 for 5 on 4th down. So that tells you where they are with that. Ole Miss 5 of 13 on 3rd down, 2 of 3 on 4th down. Vanderbilt held the ball for 32 minutes and 59 seconds. Yeah, I don't know what Siski's doing right now. I'm not sure. He texted me a few minutes ago. His kid had a few opinions there. Now, look, A&M still owes Jimbo a ton of money. I mean, you better know who you are hiring him. Let's see, Chase, where would you put Ole Miss in the initial college football ranking? Yeah, it comes out this week, does it? Let me pull it up real quick. What's the top 25 currently, just from an AP standpoint? Yeah, Oklahoma's going to tumble. It's just a matter of where. Let's see, top 25 rankings. I know it's bad pod, but I'm going to pull it up here, so just give me a second. You guys aren't going anywhere. Georgia 1, Michigan 1, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Oklahoma. I don't think Oklahoma falls below Ole Miss. I think they're very close, but just kind of knowing how that works, my guess is no on that. Brian, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. You're one of those bad rebels that left at halftime tonight. What's up, bud?
Oh, well, I have a post game show to do that I get paid large sums of money to do. So I had to go get set up for that. So I might have more of an excuse than some. But I did make a comment as we were leaving that it looked like the student section had the same idea. We stuck around for a second at halftime. I was giving dear friend Michael Portner a ride home. And so we waited for a second. And then I looked out right before we left. And it cleared out pretty good before right at halftime.
Marine Rebel, thanks for super chat. He says, "How long has it been since Ole Miss held 3 straight opponents to less than 300 yards of offense? Good stat to have." Yeah, it's been a minute. That's a hell of a stat. I did not realize that.
So you figure it's probably in the game notes. There was a nice nugget there in the stats last week that it was the last time Ole Miss had held back to back opponents, so 2 straight under 300 yards or 350 or whatever it was 09. Actually, it was LSU. I think it was Tennessee and whomever they played before that. And I believe that was a Lane Kiffin coached Tennessee team that year. So I don't know about 3 straight though.
Big 12 in a mess. Randy says Iowa State, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, and Kansas State all 4-1 currently.
If you're looking, I guess, really, really big picture at if Ole Miss were to actually somehow beat Georgia and run the table, I guess Oklahoma losing today was fairly good news for them.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're just. I mean,
That
you.
guarantees 2 losses between Oklahoma and Texas, don't you think? I know it's
Yeah,
not
that's the
decided,
thing. I
but
mean, if we're gonna have that conversation, and again, I think we're a week away from the introductory conversation because if Ole Miss beats A&M, you at least are going into the Georgia game going, hey, if they do this, then this. You know what I mean? Like, hey, like we can go ahead and kind of get there. You don't have to wait for Georgia to happen first because I mean that's the fun in this. We're all just having fun. We're watching sports. We're doing all these things. So I don't mind the conversation. But you know you're going 11-1 or none of it matters. It's all a moot point. So every week you're just sitting here trying to figure out where losses are coming from elsewhere. And look, chaos is going to happen. It's what happens late in college football seasons. It's inevitable. So yes, Oklahoma losing today, the Pac-12, you need Washington to lose, you need Oregon to do all kind of stuff. Like there's all kind of crap that's going to come up. But yeah, what you've done now is make it where no matter what, you're at least an arguable spot ahead of whoever the Big 12 champion is and whoever comes out of that mess over there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Neil wrote something earlier this week that I read somewhere. Forgive me, I can't remember where it is. And he kept talking about the conversation being premature. And like, sure it is, but if you think about it, Ole Miss got through the Alabama, LSU, Arkansas stretch at 2-1, and then you have a bye week, and you have like the weird game at Auburn. But Auburn's a bad team, and then you play Vanderbilt. It's kind of one of those things. Where it's like, yes, it's premature, and it's not something that should really, really be discussed in a ton of detail until, like you mentioned, after next week. But at that point, like you hit kind of a lull in the schedule with the bye week and Auburn and Vanderbilt. Like, what the hell else were you going to talk about?
Tell me about it a little bit. What was the atmosphere early, the crowd, that kind of deal, and what'd you kind of get from the game tonight?
I feel like every time I give a crowd opinion, I get some sort of DM or email telling me I'm wrong. I'm not any sort of like crowd seismist here, but one man's opinion here from where I sat in the stadium. I thought it was actually a pretty good crowd. The student section was full before the game, which always helps in terms of like the aesthetics of it. And other than that Vanderbilt section on that right side of the away side end zone and then kind of the area behind the van, it looked pretty full. It was actually a lot bigger crowd than I figured it would be. And I was gauging that mostly based off the amount of tickets I got offered this week. It seemed like people are giving those suckers away pretty good, but I thought it was a pretty good turnout for the most part.
Yeah, people showed. It just didn't have a ton of energy the same way of games you expect because Vanderbilt's on the other sideline and it was a blowout so quickly. Like,
Yeah,
but
Ole
the
Miss
bodies
jumped
were
on
in
it
the
very
seats.
quickly. It was like a very, very much like Ole Miss Vanderbilt-ish game, if that makes any sense. Ole Miss jumped on them quickly. There was a lull in the middle of the game, and then Ole Miss magically covers in the fourth quarter. Like it just kind of went, honestly, basically like I thought it might. Boy, are they bad up front. Vanderbilt, that is.
Barbara in our stream trying to revolutionize things. She says, "Y'all, I've discovered a way to turn regular off-brand cinnamon rolls into Cinnabon rolls." So that's going on right now. What do you got? Give us the lowdown. How are we turning the generic bad cinnamon roll into a name brand cinnamon roll? A little bit of a non sequitur, but I'll allow it at 10:43 on Saturday night. I'm sure some people out there had a few cocktails, had a few drinks, probably wouldn't mind a cinnamon roll at the moment.
Are you asking me? What does that mean? I eat cinnamon rolls. What do you mean turning it around? I thought you just had a cinnamon roll. What?
No,
I'm
in the
confused.
stream over here, Barbara says that she has a hack for making a cinnamon roll much better. So I'd like for her to explain. I want to know what the hack is to improve the off-brand cinnamon roll.
Oh, I thought you were asking me. I was like, you know
No,
better. I just
no,
grew up
I'm
a Pop
talking to
Tart. I don't
Barbara.
even know how to turn on a microwave hardly. I'm not having any hacks towards cinnamon rolls.
You don't cook at all, do you?
No, I don't cook anything. I can throw a decent like LB's Greg has taught me enough to where I can like throw a decent like some sort of meat on the grill and not screw it up. But if you're involved in an oven or any sort of kitchen appliances or utensils, I'm out. I'm pretty inept.
So if I was like, hey, you got to make a homemade lasagna for me tomorrow, you're screwed.
Yeah, I'd buy it.
Okay,
Can you buy,
gotcha.
can you buy ready-made lasagna? I wouldn't even know where to start. I know there's cheese and noodles. That's about it.
All right, she says, cover them in heavy cream, then mix together butter and brown sugar in a bowl. Cover them with that, and then let's see, throw them in the oven.
Isn't
So we're
that how
cooking
you just make a cinnamon roll?
do what?
She said brown sugar, bread, icing in an oven.
Yeah, so
Is that
do the regular
how you
cinnamon
make a
roll, and
cinnamon
then
roll?
yeah, cover it in heavy cream, then mix together butter and brown sugar in a bowl. Cover them with that, and then throw it in the oven.
What is the hack?
Well,
I
that
mean,
is
that
the
would be
hack. The
like,
butter and brown sugar and covering up. You're adding ingredients to a normal cinnamon roll.
is the sugar on cinnamon rolls not already brown sugar?
Well, we're doing more then. I don't know. I'm not sure what they're made of. I'm just telling you, we're adding these products. That's where we are with this.
Okay, I'm just curious. Like that'd be like, hey, you want to know how to make a scrambled egg better? You put it in a skillet and then scramble
It
it.
says you have to use off-brand though, so like the cheapest ones you can find at the grocery store.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll take your word for it. I just
What was
thought
the
that was.
crowd reaction when they wanted Pegues to score a touchdown on like 4 plays?
I honestly was so distracted by the fact that he kept doing that. I was like, is this a lane thing where it's Vanderbilt and he's just trying to kind of screw with the opponent a little bit? I will say the one that was in the end zone near where I was the time he tried to do it, he almost inched that sucker into the end zone. He got stopped at the line of scrimmage. He kind of lumbered forward, and then he fell because he's massive, like felt like 9 feet forward, and I thought he might have gotten in the end zone, but he was just a little bit short. I didn't notice any huge reaction to it, but I'm also not a good gauge of that either.
I told Jeffrey I have no issue with it because Vanderbilt was never going to threaten. Let's have some fun and live a little. Like what's it hurt? This wasn't Freeze with a double wide receiver reverse pass in a close game. Vanderbilt was zero threat.
How about the Barry Brunetti package? I keep waiting for that to come back somehow,
Yeah, no.
some
I
way.
mean, again, look. I'm enjoying it. I appreciate it. This is not any sort of negative. The little bit of like criticism or negativity off a 33-7 win over Vanderbilt, there would be years where people would be paying and killing for a 33-7 win over Vanderbilt with how dumb this rivalry and all this stuff has been over the years, and how Ole Miss typically finds a way to lose some dumb game they're not supposed to lose. I get the Egg Bowl still to go, but I mean, this team, and it's the same thing. It's such a broken record. They're just mentally pretty damn tough. They're finding ways to do just sort of what they're supposed to do every week and get through things and move on. I mean, it's the first time that I have felt like in Lane, because even in 2021 they were sort of riding the wave, and they had Corral and Sam Williams, and they had the captains and the guys that were sort of leading the team. But this is not really a group of front runners. I mean, this is a deal where they're just simply playing pretty good football and finding ways to win football games. I mean, it's a pretty damn admirable trade. It's kind of the whole point. And yeah, I think Daniel was right. Sometimes you just put other stuff on tape, spread some love on a low energy week. Lane was definitely worried about the energy this week. Might have even said, "Hey, we're going to run some weird stuff there to get everybody involved." He mentioned the basketball goal, which, look, I can go both ways. It's a ton of fun, and I think fun is kind of Ole Miss's brand right now in recruiting and in general. And they're going to throw the party in the SIP, and they're going to do all these things. And you're over here with fire extinguishers and dunking on the sidelines. There is a part of me, as I turn 40 years old in about a month, of, hey, if Doug Nikhazy couldn't ride a skateboard, you probably don't need your running back trying to jump up in the air and slam a basketball during a game. Just saying increase a knee or an ankle does something funny.
I missed most of this. I, of course, was in the stadium for most of it, watched some of the second half. Maybe I just missed over it. I was watching a little bit of Georgia Tech, North Carolina, but as the game got out of hand. So I saw they had a basketball goal on the sideline. Are they dunking an actual basketball? What was that? Was it an air dunk? Where did that come from? Is this a new fire extinguisher? I was very confused by this entire phenomenon.
No, I mean that's what Lane said he was looking for. I mean, he basically told him, "Hey, we're gonna dunk some basketballs this week. That's a celebration that's now on the sidelines." The goal was set at 8.5 feet and live a little.
Okay. It's a shame they don't have Michael Trigg. I heard he was a great dunker.
He would have been the best dunker on the team.
Oh, I don't know. You got to give Priestcorn. He's 6'6". He's a lot closer to the rim. I heard he could throw one down back in the day. He can still dunk. I say back in the day. He said he hasn't tried in a while for the reasons that you just outlined, but I do think he could probably still hang on rim a bit.
Neil, you're joining Brian and myself right now. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're lovely. Can you turn you up just a touch?
Yeah.
Thank you. Neil
Is that better?
McCready now joining the show. I don't have them in video form at the moment, but he is now there, back in the Clark Ford studio after 33-7 Rebels over Commodores. I'm assuming. I'm not assuming. Neil's column was up before the game ended, or right as it ended. I would assume. So it is there
Shortly
for you to
thereafter.
read. You got a breath? You good? Long day?
No, I'm
Long
good.
night?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just kind of hustling here because I knew you were. I didn't know what your situation was, so I was trying to help.
So what did Lane say? What was the gist? Press conference updates? Where do we stand on that?
Um, Lane didn't have a whole lot to say. Let's see. He got out. I mean, he talked about how they got off to a good start. He was really pleased with the defense, defensive front, especially Pete Golding. He talked about the impact that he's had, which is obvious. So the offense got off to a really good start, and then they kind of, bogged down a little bit in the third quarter. I mean, he didn't say this, but it was pretty obvious that, the game was 26-0 pretty quick, and then I think everybody started thinking probably about what's ahead. And, from that point forward, it was, they had a hard time kind of getting it going again. They didn't throw the ball as well as I think he wanted to throw it. You know, I didn't ask him about it. I asked Jackson about it. I asked him what his health was, and he just said, I'll be good. But I think it's pretty obvious when you look at Jackson Dart that he's not 100% healthy right now. I think that's impacting his footwork a little bit. I think it's impacting some of his strength on his throws. He talked about how he wasn't particularly pleased with how he executed, but I think you can see that he's just not 100% right now, and that lack of being 100% is impacting his game, making him compensate in other ways, and he's still probably kind of figuring that out a little bit. I thought he made some good throws, and then I just thought there was a period of the game where he just wasn't very sharp.
So, I mean, I'm asking you to guess here, but I mean, is that something that he's potentially just playing with the rest of the season?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd hate to even speculate on that, but yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly possible. That it's something that he's just going to have to deal with, and I think it's the injury that he suffered early in that Arkansas game. I can't really, maybe in the first series of that game, and I just think it's impacting his kind of lower body strength, and it's probably something he's just got to work through.
Where'd you stand on them giving Pegues plenty of chances to score a touchdown?
What the hell?
It's kind of where I was too.
I mean, have fun with it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's you do want to do some things that create some locker room chemistry. And I think they love JJ, and he's an Oxford kid, and they wanted to give him a chance. And you put some crap like that on film, you're going to make Texas A&M spend a period sometime this week on, hey, if 89 comes in, here's what they kind of do a little bit. But other than that, I certainly didn't get worked up over them experimenting a little bit. The game was never in doubt. I mean, to prove how good Vegas is, I mean, they won by 26. The line was 25. I mean, Vegas is kind of onto it. I mean, it was fine. I had no. I'm sure some fans got worked up about this. Lane said this, and I think he's right. It tells you where the program is. That Ole Miss wins a conference game by 26 points, and people are kind of grumbling a little bit.
What it tells me is that at sometime in the next 2 weeks they're going to run that same package, but there's going to be 2 or 3 eye candy gimmicks off of it. They set up a very base version of that play, and there's going to be something that runs off of that against A&M or Georgia with Pegues in there.
Oh yeah, I'd buy that. That makes
sense. It
was
a safe way to set up a baseline play.
Yeah, I'd buy that. Like I said, someone at Texas A&M tomorrow is going to spend half an hour diagramming all that stuff, and they're going to put it in, and at some point they'll make them work it a little bit. Yeah, and they'll probably show them something completely different.
Brian, you obviously wrote the profile on Caden this week. I mean, you talked to him even, I think, yesterday or the day before. How's he kind of handled these last couple of weeks? I mean, how did you sort of rate his demeanor and whatnot this week?
He's a pretty level-headed kid. I think they had known for a while that his father was not in good shape. It wasn't any sort of, I would say, stark surprise. Not that makes it any easier, but I feel like he had some time to prepare for that as well. And, he was pretty shooken up by it. They've lived a lot of life, particularly in the last 3 weeks. I imagine there's a little bit of relief in that, in all of this as well, that he's no longer suffering and all of that. But, he seemed, I don't know, as cheerful or as positive as you could possibly be after something that happened like that. So he's a pretty tough kid. I wasn't necessarily shocked that he went and played at Auburn and played well, but I don't want that also to diminish the amount of strength that it took to do something like that.
Neil, I have not said anything about what you and I were texting about. Was there any sign of before I say this?
He was asked specifically about Ashim Young. And said that he was not there, it was disciplinary, and that it's unfortunate. I asked a representative about what you and I talked about, and he was unaware. I did talk to someone who said that there were a lot of meetings occurring that were somewhat abnormal today at the team hotel.
We were. I know we're talking in code here. I stress that it's rumor at the moment. I think that's absolutely do it, but we don't like to keep you guys in the dark either. We did not notice Ashim Young or Braylon Brown at the stadium today, and the hearing from someone plus just rumor in general that they are facing disciplinary actions that could be long term. Again, not saying it is long term. I don't know. I am not reporting that, but we try to keep you guys abreast. And at least for today, they were not active, not present, and we do not know where that is moving forward. So just heads up there. But the defensive back transfer from Iowa State, Ashim Young, that's in his second year, and then obviously Braylon Brown, the wide receiver, who has not been able to crack considerable time in the rotation. He did play a good bit with Watkins banged up. I think he played 20 something snaps last week. But that is sort of where that stands right there. So just heads up on that as we try to alert you to what we're aware of. We'll
Not to dovetail off that, and I know
Yeah.
it's not related, but Neil, did they offer anything on Perkins? I feel like I didn't see him today. I'm sure he was on the sideline or at the stadium, but I didn't notice him playing a whole lot today.
He played a good bit in the second quarter. I'll be honest
Okay.
with you, Brian. Once we got into like the first part of the fourth quarter, I was not paying attention as much as I was writing, so I don't know whether he played any more than that. I did not hear anything about anything involving him. I suspect that it was somewhat matchup related. I can tell you that Lane admitted that when they brought in Taylor, the other quarterback, that he asked, "Who is that guy?" They were not prepared for. They were not prepared for Taylor, so they were somewhat operating blindly against the young Vanderbilt quarterback. Who's a
Well,
big
that was a
kid,
pretty
though.
good from both ways then, because Clark Lee had told the broadcast crew that if they brought Taylor into the game, he only knew 5 to 8 plays.
It
So
showed.
on both sides, I think they were just drawing it up as they could go.
He could have
Big
had
kid.
something though. He was strong as hell.
Yeah, he's a big kid, real strong, played hard, got hit a lot, kept getting up. Kudos to him.
Are you sad, Neil, that we're going to get Ole Miss Vanderbilt next season? That this rivalry is going to take a hiatus until 2025?
I mean, I like the trip to Nashville, so
Okay.
that part of it. But no, I mean the whole South's oldest rivalry or oldest continuous whatever. I was like, guys, you guys are spinning this really hard. I mean,
Hey, look, all respect to Ole Miss for doing so. If you can do anything to try to keep Vanderbilt on the schedule, you keep Vanderbilt on the schedule.
yeah,
That
I mean,
game is very important. I mean, Keith should be calling Hussey going, you know what? We don't have to play LSU. We're good. That was really a 50s and 60s thing. But Vanderbilt, that's modern era, guys. Like, they've won several times since 2000. Like, it's a game.
well,
You
it's
got to
my
throw the
response.
record book out when it's the Rebels and the Commodores.
Neil, you're not going to miss that stadium. I always found it to be such a cathedral to college football. I really enjoyed visiting that place. I actually think I got stuck in the elevator there one night because it stopped working.
The horn is the thing.
Yeah, I won't miss the horn. Again, I have to compliment them. Last year, the coffee was fantastic, and I credit them for that because before that, it was the worst ever. But last year, it was amazing. Seriously, it was great. It was my response to whenever Ole Miss people would say the league's out to get us, and I'm like, so they gave you Vanderbilt as the permanent opponent? No, I mean those two things don't jive.
How shocked by the Oklahoma thing today were you?
I mean, not super shocked because the line never really jumped more than about 9 points, and a lot of people were saying, "Hey, watch Kansas here," and then there was a weather issue that Kansas handled a whole lot better than Oklahoma. And I mean, look, I don't know how you say his name, Leipold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That guy's done a hell of a job. I mean, he really has. He's done a hell of a job. That program was not that long ago was just an absolute dumpster fire. It was the worst. And he's made them more than respectable. Kudos to him. I mean, it was a huge win for them. I mean, you could tell just how cathartic that win was. It was every bit as big of a loss for Oklahoma. And frankly, from a playoff standpoint, it might be enough to knock the Big 12 out.
Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier. Basically, everybody's at 4-1 inside that league. We don't know what the college football playoff committee will do on Tuesday, but when you do 10 thoughts, how far do you drop the Sooners? Do the Rebels have a chance of jumping over them in these first playoff rankings?
Yeah, yeah. Ole Miss jumps over them. I mean, Ole Miss is one-loss team, and the one loss was at Alabama. Alabama's a one-loss team, and the one loss was at Texas, or at home against Texas, I should say. Yeah, I mean, I think Ole Miss, depending on what happens with this Oregon State game, Ole Miss is like 9th or 10th.
Oregon State, Arizona tied at 10 at the half, I think, unless I missed something there late.
That's correct. That's right. Yeah, I think Ole Miss is probably the way the AP poll works. They'll probably be 11th, maybe 10th. But yeah, if I had a ballot, I would probably have Ole Miss at 9th or 10th, probably 10th. Just in my
What's
head,
your initial impression of A&M Ole Miss, Brian?
I think Ole Miss is a lot better than Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M has a lot of talent, particularly up front defensively, but that offense doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. And I think Ole Miss, I'm not very good at the whole line guessing, but if you made me guess, it's Ole Miss, I don't know, by 4-ish, maybe higher. What do you think?
Jeffrey thought 6.5 even.
Oh,
I could see that.
I was going to say 5.5, but yeah, 6.5, somewhere in there. I think Ole Miss is better than A&M. There's one area of concern if you're Ole Miss, and from a matchup standpoint, it's your offensive line against their defensive line. But guys, Durkin's running a lot of three-man front. I mean, he's not taking advantage of a lot of their defensive line talent. South Carolina's not a good gauge because their offensive line is not good, and then it got hurt. On top of not being good, they have injuries. And so they were a shell of themselves from an offensive line standpoint. I don't know how much you can read into that game one way or the other. And then, I thought A&M was a little sleepy early, and then they kind of woke up and got going in the second quarter, and you saw the rest of it. But, I mean, this is a game Ole Miss should win. I wrote that in my column. I mean, I guess if you told me that A&M won, I'm not just blown away, stunned, but I would be surprised. I think Ole Miss is clearly a better team, and assuming that Ole Miss doesn't turn the ball over 3-4 times, I think they're going to win. They're going to have a huge crowd. The weather's going to be amazing. I mean, look,
they're tougher with less dysfunction mentally.
Yeah. And would you trust Max Johnson to go on the road and win a game like that and their offense to do enough collectively?
Johnson is just serviceable right now. He'll make a play here and there. You've got to be aware of Smith, number one. Is it number 1 or 0, the wide receiver? He's a hell of a good player. You have to account for him at all times because he can hurt you. But they don't have this collection of receivers that you thought they would have, that you think they should have, that they've kind of recruited. They're just not there. Their tight ends are sort of pedestrian. Their front is fine. It's nothing special. I think A&M's going to struggle to score against Ole Miss. I mean, Lane said it again tonight, and he's right. There was this mass panic when Ole Miss gave up basically 50 points and 700 yards or whatever it was. Don't hold me to the numbers. I can't remember. 600 and something yards against LSU. And Lane said it again tonight. He goes, look, that's what LSU does. They just score on everybody. You almost have to throw them out as an outlier. And if you go back and look at the other games that they've played, including Alabama, since Georgia Tech, really. And by the way, the guy at Georgia Tech's doing a hell of a job. But
he's 4-0 against ranked ACC teams, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, what an amazing job he's done. But outside of LSU, since the Georgia Tech game, this defense has played really, really well, and they've controlled things. And I think they'll do the same thing against Texas A&M. And so as long as the offense doesn't get bogged down with a bunch of turnovers and stuff, I just think Ole Miss wins the game. And I don't know, 7 to 13 points, somewhere in there. I mean, I think it's a competitive, fairly close game. But look, I kind of think this team's going 10-2. I mean, obviously winning in Athens is a tall order for Ole Miss or for anyone that doesn't wear an NFL shield on the front of their jersey. I mean, it's just hard to go in there. But I think Ole Miss beats A&M.
Jay Young, thanks for the super chat there. Says Clark Lee is Neil's doppelganger. Please discuss. Did you go down and get a picture before the game or anything? I mean, y'all have a kinship.
I did not. I've been told that that's been talked about too much and is worn out. So I avoided the whole.
You
the whole
definitely
topic.
could go as Clark Lee for Halloween next week.
Yeah.
We could get you a polo, clipboard.
A Vanderbilt polo. Does he even carry a clipboard? I don't pay attention.
Well, he has like the notepad because he's constantly writing stuff down. He's big on the notes. I mean, it's not like the Jimbo big trapper keeper, but it's definitely a little thing he's writing on there. Yes, Rippy is wearing a NPW Digital polo, gentilapparel.com/NPW for that exact one. I believe he is wearing the Navy baseball polo, if I have it correct, from where I'm currently sitting right now.
That is correct. It took someone else pointing out like the third time I wore it for me to notice it was actual baseballs, but I do like the shirt.
How'd they get out health-wise, Neil?
I didn't notice anything other than, Anthony got hurt late in the game. I couldn't tell whether that was like just a knee thing or whether he was hurt. He didn't. I don't think he returned, but it didn't appear to be super serious.
Yeah, he limped off, but it would not. I mean, yeah, I don't think it was anything of major note at all. I think they've gotten out pretty well from that standpoint. Penalties cleaned up, was fairly okay considering the blowout. Whatever. I mean, it's as I wrote about. They did so many things in the first quarter and a half to just put the game away that it's hard to really even analyze a 33-7 win over Vanderbilt.
I mean, I refuse. They did what they're supposed to do. They dominated the game. There was absolutely zero doubt who was going to win that game after the opening drive. They screwed around and got a penalty and had to kick a field goal, and then they did the goofy thing and had to kick another field goal. But they were fine. They controlled the game. There was never. I've seen teams play with their food a lot more than Ole Miss did tonight. That was more than fine.
Yeah, did Zachary Franklin play? Did either one of y'all see him?
I did not see him play.
He did not have a target possession in the first half when the game was inconsequence. I did notice that. They went with Wade, Watkins, Priestcorn split out a lot. And I did not notice Franklin being on the field, particularly in the first half.
From a target standpoint for the game, Wade 9 targets, Harris 8 targets, Watkins 6 targets, Aiden Williams, Quinshon Judkins, and Ulysses Bentley all 1 target apiece. And Spencer did get the mop-up work there late. We have not mentioned that yet on the show.
He did. And he was in on the goal line package with Pegues and all that.
Wide open had they simply not jumped. There was no one guarding him whatsoever. I really needed a Pegues to Spencer Sanders touchdown pass because that was nowhere near my bingo card going into the season or the night. So that'd have been kind of nice. I'd have been all in on that. And it was Sanders who jumped, right?
I'm not sure. I
think he was like so excited. He's the one that jumped.
Watching it, you could tell it was discombobulated from the jump. There was confusion about who was in. It was a mess. I was when it was flagged, I was not surprised at all. It was like there was a collection of flags that probably could have been thrown.
Last thing, both of you guys, Jeffrey and I talked about it at length. Is 9-3 a disappointment at this point?
No. Because before the season, and I wrote this in my column, before the season, 8-4 was considered really good. 9-3 was considered a significant achievement. Anything more than that was considered amazing. It's not right to move the goalpost now. That's no. 9-3 is not a disappointment.
There's also two different. Like I get this is semantics. Something can be disappointing in its current state and not be a disappointment to a larger scale, if that makes sense.
Sure.
You can be disappointed in 9-3 because you didn't take advantage of something. But when you look at the season as a totality, if Ole Miss goes to the Citrus Bowl at 9-3, it was not a disappointing season.
Yeah. So
Brian, go ahead.
So
No,
go ahead.
that's where I fall. I mean, I don't even really disagree with Neil, because I keep getting reminded every day when I walk into work on Mondays. We did like an office pool. I think I did pick Ole Miss to go 7-5. So it's definitely not a disappointment. But with the way like the season is framed now, particularly I would say like post Arkansas week when they got through that LSU, Alabama, Arkansas stretch, given what you knew about the remaining opponents, if they do go 9-3, I think it will feel disappointing a bit because that would mean you probably lost to either Texas A&M or Mississippi State, which would feel definitely disappointing. But for the season to be a disappointment at 9-3 and for the goalpost to be moved does feel a bit unfair. But I guess both things can be true at once.
Yeah, that's true. Here's the fun part, and I wrote this in my column. If this were happening next season, we would be, I mean, underwater in playoff conversation right now.
Oh God! I mean, it would be, can they get a home game? Can they do this? I mean, because
Yep.
the conversation we're currently having on, are they going to make the playoff? That would be, hey, is there some crazy ass way for them to get a bye? Are
Yeah.
they going to get a home game? Like, that would, I mean, we don't know the exact rules yet, but that would be the conversation we're having.
Yeah. The
That's why I don't get the
conversation.
anti-expansion folks. Like, how fun would that conversation be? They put up the graphic on game day today with the buys and all of that. And if you look at those potential matchups, so what person that likes football would sit there and say, I actually hate this. This shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
It's fair.
This season, the 12-game playoff, the 12-team playoff, not 12-game, 12-team playoff would be awesome because there's actually parity for the first time in a long time. I mean, there's not outside of Georgia, who, like today, Georgia got challenged and people said they might lose and they took it personally and you saw what happened. Outside of Georgia, there's nobody that you look at and go, man, I just don't know. I don't think anybody can get them. I mean, there's a collection of good teams. And, I mean, 10-2 Ole Miss would make it. Probably as like the 10 or the 11 and get sent to some place where they'd have a legitimate shot to win the game. And if they won the game, they'd have a legitimate shot to win the next game. And that's
And
fun.
look,
Like Brian said, I mean, who doesn't want more good football? I mean, if that means that we don't get to see the Music City Bowl, cool. I mean, I'm good with that. The truth is we can have that and still have the Music City Bowl.
100%. Never understood the devaluing the regular season argument anyway. I always go back to that A&M game in 21. Like, that was for a Sugar Bowl. Like, okay, cool, but the Sugar Bowl was an exhibition that didn't actually matter. Imagine with that game in late November with the playoff spot on the line. It would be incredible stuff. It would actually make the regular season matter more in November to more people, more programs in
yeah,
it.
Well, and like this year, I mean, this year, let's play it out. Let's say Ole Miss beats Texas A&M, loses to Georgia, and beats ULM. The Egg Bowl would be huge, massive, because Mississippi State would have a real opportunity to play the ultimate spoiler. They could knock Ole Miss out of the playoff. You don't think that'd be a little nervous? I mean, that's awesome. Who wouldn't? People would watch that all over the country. Ole Miss wins and they're in, lose and they're out. As opposed to what it will be this year in that scenario where Ole Miss, let's say Ole Miss beats Texas A&M, loses to Georgia, and beats ULM. What is all that's really at stake for, and I'm talking not from an Ole Miss perspective, okay, but from a national perspective. Are people really all that concerned about whether Ole Miss gets an Access Bowl or not? Not really.
yeah, yeah. Is Ole Miss going to the Cotton Bowl, or is Tulane going to make them have to go to the Orange Bowl? That's it.
Yeah, or if Ole Miss loses to State, they go to the Citrus instead of the Cotton. The random college football fans like, oh, whatever, who cares? I mean, it's not playoff. But if it were, hey, if they win, they're in the playoff, and if they lose, they're out of the playoff. Everybody's watching. It's totally. I mean, it's going to be really exciting. I mean, it's a shame that it's not this year. It really is. It's a shame that it's not this year because this year would be fun. We'd have an opportunity to get, like Oregon today. Oregon went to Utah and just kicked their ass. Oregon has that one loss hanging over them, and even if they win out, there's going to be this argument against them. No, Oregon belongs in a playoff. If you were in a 12-team playoff, we'd there's a real chance we get Oregon and Washington in the playoff, which
Mm-hmm.
would be a lot of fun, right? I mean, you might get that game where Ole Miss goes to Oregon, or Ole Miss went to Washington, or vice versa. They came to Oxford. Be the biggest game in those campuses' histories, and that would be a lot of fun. As opposed to there's a scenario, guys, where Ole Miss wins out, goes 11-1, and they're the 5th team,
Mm-hmm.
and that sucks. Where your one loss was at Alabama, but you don't get in because just the way the kind of math works, that sucks. It's always sucked. They've always gotten bailed out, and they'll probably get bailed out again this year because they always get bailed out. But the 4 team was always stupid.
Yeah, after going after Harbaugh early in the week, Kirby today, yes, he did go after Mullen a little bit, as Mullen had predicted the close game with the Florida win, whatever is they're mentioning in the stream.
A little bit?
Yeah, a little bit.
He thought he went after him a little bit. Oh, I thought he went after him a lot bit.
Said he did not like to recruit was his quote there.
For a guy who's right now trying to get back into coaching, that was an indictment.
What has made? I mean, I know he's always a good press conference guy, but what's made Kirby actually take the gloves off this week? Why are we feeling ourselves this week?
Because they've been bored. And now they're about to, they know what's coming. Look, the truth is, and some of the guys at UGA Sports, part of the Rivals Network, wrote this. They're about to get challenged. Kirby knows it. I mean, they slept. Like Jeffrey sent me a text going, "How the hell did Georgia not beat this team 60-0?" And I said, they were bored.
Mm-hmm.
Not bored now. They weren't bored today.
They got to have their best effort of the year 3 games in a row.
Yeah. Are they gettable against Missouri? Are they gettable against Ole Miss? I don't know. I mean, we're about to find out.
But it's by far their most difficult stretch. And Missouri and Ole Miss are not natural get-up games for them.
No. Tennessee is, right? When they go to Knoxville, they kind of it's in their DNA to get up for that game. They didn't get up for Missouri last year.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably get up for them this
time.
time.
Now that'll help now. Yeah.
But then a week later, you got to get up for Ole Miss, and they hadn't played Ole Miss in forever. And by the time Ole Miss gets to that
16, when it was Kirby getting boat raced,
and Ole Miss will probably have a single digit by its name going into that game. I mean, they'll probably be 8th, 9th, somewhere in there.
Yeah. No, I definitely think so. We have time for that, though. A&M is up next, 11 o'clock in Oxford from Baltimore Stadium next week. Ole Miss got through this weird stretch after the bye week. Auburn last week. By the way, congratulations to Auburn for beating State today, I guess. I actually found myself kind of pulling for Auburn as that game was going on today. I did not know who I was going to be pulling for when it started, but you always sort of pick a team. And I was kind of pulling for State and for Auburn in that one for whatever reason.
I know who I was pulling for.
It was the Bulldogs.
I was.
Yeah.
I went into it not knowing who I would be cheering for, and by the middle of the game, I knew exactly who I was cheering for.
They were incredibly inept offensively. It's not pretty. They've got they've got some holes, they got some issues, but nonetheless, they got through Auburn, got through Vanderbilt here with this one 33-7 over the Commodores. We will have a full week of podcasts. Again, this will be up in podcast form too for anybody doing the stream. As always, our podcast brought to you by Twisted Tea as well. So I'll hope you have a wonderful night. Really appreciate Jeffrey for his time earlier, and then Neil and Brian here as well. So we'll wrap it up there. Ole Miss 33, Vanderbilt 7. This show presented by Dead Soxy, showing you the juice socks on the screen. You can get a sock subscription from Dead Soxy, or use the code RebelGrove, 20% off always there with Dead Soxy. So stay Soxy, and we'll have a full week of podcasts beginning on Monday.